The people of Texas constitute a free, sovereign, and independent republic, and we fearlessly and confidently commit the issue to the decision of the supreme arbiter of nations.
These words from the Declaration of Independence of the Republic of Texas, written in 1836, are carved in the west face of the Texas Archives building, near the Texas State Capitol. Some other stirring words are also carved there.
All political power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their benefit. First Constitution, State of Texas, 1845.
These are noble words, expressive of all that is best in the American political system, but their nobility is tarnished. The words are not matched by the facts of Texas politics and Texas government. Texas has other less pleasant aspects, some of them explosively ugly. Like the Dallas hate-mongers of the far right who struck and spat upon United Nations Ambassador Adlai Stevenson. And like the mink-coated mobsters of the far right who roughed up and spat upon the man who is now President of the United States. Blind and unreasoned hate arises naturally from all political extremes and extremists. And so a hatred from the lunatic left, obviously nurtured in the respectability afforded hate by some Texans, struck down John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Two Texas faces, one reflecting absolute confidence in the ability of people to govern themselves, the other showing naked fear of that ability.
Come all you good workers, good news to you I'll tell.
A story of people-to-people politics. This is the Texas Cope story.
Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize. Tell me, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Account of some first battles in a new Texas revolution. Yes, revolution. Aimed at the restoration of sanity to Texas politics, at restoring the government of Texas to the people of Texas, all the people of Texas, an engagement between those who believe the words carved so boldly and those who do not. Of course, not all hatred, not all fear of the inherent political power of the people manifests itself in a spat upon Stevenson, a jostled Johnson, an assassinated president. Fear and hate have their slower, quieter, but no less deadly methods. A vicious right-to-work law, a loaded dice anti-picketing law, no industrial safety law, a discriminatory voter registration law, a low-ranked education system. Some fears, some hates work slowly, like water washing away earth, eroding away, washing away the inherent political power of the people. Let us examine a single erosion, a single denial of the lives of ordinary Texas people. Texas, big, bold, bragging Texas, is this nation's sixth most industrialized state. Sixth most industrial, but 35th in personal per capita income. Sixth most industrial, but without a state minimum wage law. More than 1.5 million Texans from the land of the big rich earn less than $1.25 an hour, and 500,000 of these make less than 75 cents an hour. Hourly wages of 10, 12, 15 cents an hour are not uncommon in big, bragging Texas. So what do you do about it? How do you try to make the facts fit the pretty words on the wall? This is what Texas Cope did and is doing by and through a people-to-people movement called the Texas Coalition. And it began here. Here in the shadow of the Texas Capitol, symbolic of the long, dark shadows thrown by a state government long oblivious to the needs of ordinary people, Hank Brown, president of Texas AFL-CIO and chairman of Texas State COPE, articulated a set of obvious facts. Texas AFL-CIO represents about 3.5 million working people, organized and unorganized, and the minority. Texas has some 2 million Negroes in its population, a minority. There are about 2 million so-called Mexicanos in Texas, Texans of Mexican ancestry, a minority. And several 100,000 Texans are liberal in politics and philosophy, a minority. Separately, no one of these minority groups, union members, Negroes, Mexicanos, liberals, can make its political weight felt, but together, joined for common social and political aims, well, add 'em up. Organized labor plus Negroes plus Mexicanos plus liberals. Can't you add them together and make a majority, or close enough to it? This was Texas COPE's question, asked of the leadership of each minority. And yes was the answer received from each minority group, first from the leadership, and then, as the coalition idea spread deeper, from rank and file members of each minority group. The coalition structure was purposely kept simple. Its major cohesive element, aside from the imperative need to make Texas state government responsive and sympathetic, is an understanding that each member organization keeps its own autonomy, each reserving to itself the right to speak for itself. Thus, only organized labor speaks for organized labor, only a Negro for Negroes, only a Mexicano for Mexicanos, only a liberal for liberals. Each member group is represented at the top by a coalition co-chairman. Co-chairman Albert Pena, Jr. represents Mexicanos.
The Texas Coalition is based on the successful Bexar County Coalition. And as the chairman of the Bexar County Coalition, I can say that it's based on mutual respect for each other's problems. We have 4 basic groups in Bexar County and in Texas: labor, Mexican-American minority, the Negro minority, and those of us who prefer to call ourselves independent liberals. Each group has respect for the problem of the other group, and this is the foundation stone of the coalition. We do not have constitution or bylaws. We only have a mutual agreement that we will sit down and discuss all political problems and all political candidates before any one of the groups makes a political decision.
So the coalition works as a coalition only for those ends on which all its member groups can agree, and each remains, therefore, free to dissent and act separately. Is this a built-in weakness? No, no weakness, but a strength. For the need to reach agreement makes necessary the most candid give and take between coalition member groups, deepening their understanding of one another, breaking down the barriers between races and nationalities, barriers long and carefully kept in being and in excellent repair by the special anti-people interests whose existence depends upon keeping people divided and thus easier to conquer. This has long been the Texas style. Political hatchet men and errand boy candidates fronting for the special interest have manufactured in Texas some of the most vicious, most demagogic, most divisive witch hunts ever seen in the United States. Common in the mouths of Texas demagogues at all political levels have been epithets like nigger, mesquin, labor bosses and labor goons, and even uglier words. Thus, until the coalition opened lines of communication, people have been kept divided and suspicious of people with whom they have everything in common. Thus, minority Americans have been kept just that, isolated, impotent minorities. How are such deeply implanted suspicions overcome? It soon became apparent that the years of planned separation by enemies required from each member group of the coalition a demonstration of faith, a showing of passports, so to speak. Texas AFL-CIO acted first and dramatically. At its last state convention, Texas organized labor passed the most far-reaching civil rights policy ever adopted by any state labor organization, not only among the states of the old Confederacy, but of any state, anywhere. Also approved, total commitment to the civil rights program of the Kennedy-Johnson, now the Johnson administration. Both these actions carry the force of command to every affiliate of the state labor body. Coalition co-chairman and COPE chairman Hank Brown, interviewed at the convention's close, had this to say of these actions.
Yes, I think that we have had a most successful convention. I recall the newspaper headlines of 2 years ago talking about labor's great civil war and civil strife. And yet the record here at this convention that's been written shows that we have more membership than ever in our history. We are better off financially than we ever have been, and have adopted the most aggressive program that I can recall by any state AFL-CIO. Particularly, and in reference to the Civil Rights Resolution, it was adopted outlining there shall be no discrimination with regard to race, color, or creed, or discrimination of any other type where equal job opportunity is concerned. The Latin American Affairs Report, which was unanimously adopted, where we will move into South Texas with an expensive and aggressive program to educate the poor people of the valley areas and South Texas areas so that they may have economic freedom and political freedom, where for years they have been in bondage. Third is the Workers' Education Program of continuing the area program in the field of workers' education, workmen's compensation, labor laws, Social Security benefits, and all of the many things that are important to the workers and their families. And then the most important has been the COPE nickel, whereby this convention, without hardly dissent, has added to its monthly per capita of 5 cents per month, which will in turn give us the opportunity of developing a real all-out political education program to ensure victory at the polls in 1964. All in all, the officers are quite pleased with this convention.
Texas labor's act of faith was reciprocated. Spokesmen for Negroes, Mexicanos, liberals, each told their own groups of the contributions and the good faith of the others. Attorney W.J. Durham, coalition co-chairman for Negroes, summarized the coalition's cohesiveness like this.
The Texas Coalition is composed of 4 groups, and I happen to represent the Negro segment of the Texas Coalition. This group came together because of the mutual interest of each group in the political problems of the other group, and a desire on the part of the members of each group to do something constructive about the political problems of each other.
Now a dialogue had begun, at least among coalition leaders. Okay, so coalition leaders were talking to one another, but how about the ordinary people, the rank and filers of the coalition groups? How does a white union member open a continuing conversation with a Negro white-collar worker? How does a Negro communicate with a Spanish-speaking Mexicano? The coalition's answer, a so-called team program. Teams made up of representatives of each coalition member group, Negro, Mexicano, Liberal, Labor, to carry the concept and need of coalition to the troops. For more than 8 months in 1962, through all of 1963 and on into 1964, these 4-member teams crisscrossed the 250 million square miles of Texas, speaking, preaching the coalition word at rallies, union meetings, conventions, fish fries, barbecues, beer and tamale busts, even at formal banquets, speaking wherever and whenever people would gather to hear them. And gradually the coalition concept began to filter down to county, city, precinct, down to where people live. Members of minority groups began to talk with one another. Negro to white union member to Mexicano, Mexicano to liberal, and back around the circle. Everybody got into the team act. Hank Brown worked as a team member. So did liberal Larry Goodwin. So did Roy Evans. Texas AFL-CIO Secretary-Treasurer. Texas Labor's Public Relations man, Lyman Jones. Sherman Miles, AFL-CIO Legislative Director. Doris Cates, Texas Labor's Women's Activities Director. W.J. Durham. Albert Pena. All worked as team members, each team missionary appearance giving impetus and continuity to the coalition dialogue, each team session driving the coalition notion deeper and deeper. But now it was time to flesh out the bones of the coalition skeleton by finding it some financial muscle and sinew. In the Hank Brown phrase, it's time to put our money where our mouth is. For Texas AFL-CIO, this necessity gave birth to the Texas Cope Nickel. Offered for approval to the 1963 Texas AFL-CIO Convention was a 50-50 Cope Nickel program. And what is a 50-50 Cope Nickel program? First of all, it was a proposal that an additional 5 cents per member per month be added to Texas AFL-CIO's existing 13 cents per member per month per capita tax for a total of 18 cents. And it would work like this. We would change the Texas Cope Constitution to levy the added 5-cent tax. It's a temporary tax to be paid for a period of 20 months. And what's 50-50 about it? Well, every Texas AFL-CIO area council is rebated 2 1/2 cents of all Cope nickels raised in the area of its jurisdiction if that area council undertakes to set up and operate a living, breathing Cope program of its own, conforming in every detail to the requirements for such programs as spelled out in the Texas Cope Constitution. No Cope program, no rebate. In cases where an area council cannot or will not set up a Cope program, money collected from that area is used for political education in that area, but its spending is supervised by Texas state Cope officers. All the money raised by the Cope nickel, in fact, all the money expended by Cope in Texas, is spent with the approval of a special state Cope administrative committee in the November 1964 campaigns. That's the current ultimate target of Texas Cope. But there occurred in the last session of the Texas legislature a chance to let the coalition try its infant wings. The legislature decided to give Texans a chance to amend their state constitution, taking out of it the poll tax as a prerequisite for voting. Texas AFL-CIO argued that submission of the amendment should be done at the 1964 general election, not in a hurried, no time to organize special election. But the legislature, virtually the private property of anti-democratic predatory interests, went the special election route. Actually, the legislature wanted to keep the poll tax because it keeps people from voting, not to abolish it. The coalition recognized this, but nevertheless hit the ground running in an attempt to abolish the poll tax, but with an even more important goal in mind. Namely, here's an issue that can be used to organize. Here's a chance to get a coordinated Cope coalition program rolling in every area council, complete with card files on every member and every voting member of his family, all these names on mailer stencils, a women's activities division, a continuing program of voter education carried down to the most effective level, down to where the worker lives and where he votes. In short, a first-class opportunity to get a full-scale, efficient, and effective Cope coalition program geared up for the state and national elections ahead. So the campaign was undertaken. Area councils without Cope programs got programs underway. A massive effort to recruit and train precinct and block captains and block workers was begun. Negroes in their precincts, Mexicanos in their areas, union members in their bailiwicks, liberals in theirs. Hundreds of thousands of pieces of literature in English and Spanish were printed and distributed. Rallies, all possible kinds, were held. Hundreds, thousands of volunteer block workers were recruited and taken into coalition ranks. And they worked not for control of their state government and state legislature, but to make them responsive to all the people of the Lone Star State. Something it has been but briefly in the 20th century and only once or twice before that. Despite the short odds, the coalition effort might have carried poll tax repeal. But demagogues and lobbyists for the big rich, fearful that Texas people were about to win back their government, cracked down. Hate literature was disseminated. Racists took to the press and the air, ranting that niggers and Mexicans and labor goons were after poll tax repeal for selfish ends. And so, on election day, poll tax repeal lost. But the defeat was not as sour as it might have been. Why not? Well, there now exist in Texas precincts some 15,000 trained block workers, some 200,000 union members and the voters in their families are now filed on the cards and stencils of area COPE offices. Area COPE programs in being were expanded and improved. Other areas initiated COPE programs. A massive voter registration program is now underway. Most important of all, perhaps, the COPE Coalition program, on a short and skimpy trial run, turned out the biggest percentage of Texas voters ever to turn out in a special election on a constitutional amendment. All elements of the coalition turned out their own voters in numbers higher than ever before under comparable circumstances. And everywhere the COPE Coalition program was in high gear, operating as it should. The poll tax repeal issue carried. So it can be done. And Texas COPE and its coalition partners are determined that it shall be done. Why all this determination, all this effort? Why are we in politics at all? Why politics? AFL-CIO President George Meany said it like this.
In the early days, we met the starvation method. We met the company thug, the company spy, the company injunction, and the company judge. And now, where is the challenge? It's in the legislative halls. And our answer is political education and political activity.
To succeed at either of these, education and activity in politics, Texas COPE must first of all have sufficient funds. And the Texas COPE nickel alone is not enough. The nickel supplements but does not replace the annual COPE dollar drive of national COPE. Given sufficient funds, the COPE nickel and the COPE dollar drive each year, and with area COPE organizations operating at the highest possible peak of efficiency, we can achieve responsive and sympathetic government in Texas. No, it is not ruin of the Republic, as the John Birchers and their lunatic fringe allies of the far right would have you believe. It is not in any sense control of Texas government. Ordinary Texans have had quite enough of controlled government. For years they have seen what happens when a government is controlled by a rapacious and selfish interest. No, it is not control that is sought. Rather, what Texas COPE Coalition seeks is a government responsive to all the people of Texas, all Texans, rich, poor, black, white, Spanish-speaking. It seeks a state government willing to enact an industrial safety law, a decent set of prevailing wage standards, a state labor management relations act, decent schools, decent housing, decent working and living conditions, abolition of right to work, a good workman's compensation law, a good unemployment compensation law. In short, a better tomorrow for all Texans, regardless of race, creed, color, national origin, or economic class. Like it says in the words carved on the building.
All political power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their benefit.
It is just that simple. And one short phrase will say it all. We seek responsive democracy in Texas. We intend to get it, if it's humanly possible. Texas COPE and its coalition partners intend to keep alive the spirit of Texas political revolt and to fight all the way to victory. We lost a battle, as Attorney Franklin Jones, Liberal Coalition co-chairman, remarks.
My connection with the Texas Coalition is as chairman of the independent liberal element of the coalition. We do not have the ethnic or economic goals that bind the other three elements together. Our organization is in its nature loose, because to dictate to a liberal is to lose your audience. I have been taken by the unanimity of opinion that we've found in the meeting of the Texas Coalition since my association with it, and the first meeting I attended in July of 1963, with the widely divergent thinking of the liberal, the union man, the Latino, and the Negro. It is heartwarming to see that we are moving forward, as our name implies, a true coalition. Now, we have perhaps lost a battle in not repealing the poll tax or causing it to be repealed in Texas, but we have become battle-hardened, and we feel deeply encouraged that while the battle may be ended, and we the losers, that the campaign has only begun, and that in the future our organization will strengthen from month to month, and we shall win the campaign for liberalism and social justice.
Yes, we lost the first battle, just as the defenders of liberty in Texas in 1836, here at the Alamo, lost a battle. But it needs to be remembered. The comrades of those who died in the Alamo went on to win final victory at San Jacinto. We of Texas COPE and the coalition have lost an Alamo. We are preparing now to win a San Jacinto in next year's primary and general elections. We will win if we work. We will win.
Fighting for our freedom, we shall not be moved. We're fighting for our freedom, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's standing by the water, we shall not be moved.
We're fighting for our children.
We shall not be moved.
We're fighting for our children.
We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's standing by the water.